I noticed today during the meeting that there was some confusion going on. That from one time or another, people were shaking their heads because they didn't know what was being proposed. The motions, I don't know if it was a language barrier or it was some type of spiritual battle going on. But at one point, Jolly B from Uganda. What's that? Asked for prayer in response to what she saw was demonic spiritual dissension. Did you guys witness that as well and want to speak to that?
I'd like to speak to that. I think what that lady said from Uganda was very important. It was a word of God to the gathering, and it was a very beautiful moment when the light and the voice of God broke through in a very powerful way. I think it's very important. I mean, it is very sad that we didn't get what we wanted today. I think we'd all hoped that the covenant, in the form that it had come from the Covenant Design Group, would have been sent to the provinces. I think it was right to have gone forward, and I'm very sorry that it didn't. We tried to express that. We tried to encourage the council to move in that direction, but it didn't. I think at the moment it's very important for us not to get whipped up into a frenzy about what's happened. You know, Paul is quite clear about this when he said, don't try and overcome evil with evil, but overcome evil with good. We've had a setback. And, you know, we can analyse that, we can get ourselves worked up about that. But God will win in the end. You know, we have the cross. When Jesus came to his disciples on Easter Day, he came and he showed them his hands. Look, you know, these were the wounds. These were the things that had taken him to death. But he was showing them as signs of victory. And whatever has happened today, good will have the victory. God will have the victory. And we must be careful not just to whip ourselves up into a frenzy of hatred against accuser and what we think they're saying. We must look to our own souls, and we must behave in a way that is worthy of the sons and the daughters of God. God will have the victory. We must be calm. We didn't get what we wanted today, but in the end that will come through. The Anglican Communion will come through in the end, and we will have the victory, because that's the way God has made the world. So, I mean, I would say to you all, who are reporting, you know, you don't have the job of just propagating things that will disturb people. The truth is important, but not to disturb people. Yes, it's been a setback, but in the end, what is right and what is good will come from it. You know, as several of us have said, we still have Section 4. We could have lost Section that we could have gone the way of Section A, and not had the fourth part of the covenant. It's not a covenant without that. I mean, in any agreement that you have between two parties, there is a way in which people can come into an agreement, can come out of the agreement, and what happens when people, as has happened in the past, when people do something that means they can't stay within that covenant. Right, that's what Section 4 is about. It's very important for us to have Section 4 there. We still have it there.
Okay, I'm going to open up to some more reporters here real quick.
I have to leave in the morning. Can I just have one question for you all, if you would?
Yeah, I must go to.
Yeah. Does this kind of duplicity
introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry, David Virtue Online. Does this kind of duplicity today make GAFCON more of a reality to you all?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a vindication.
I would say this about GAFCON, that GAFCON isn't trying to split the Anglican Communion. GAFCON is trying to witness to what we've always believed about the Anglican Communion. So David, is your question, is GAFCON more of a reality, is really asking us, is the truth about Anglicanism more of a reality? Yes, it's more of a reality. We've never doubted its reality. We've always believed in the things that GAFCON has spoken of. But that doesn't mean to say we're against the Anglican Communion,
I wasn't suggesting.
or it's more of an option than the Anglican Communion.
I was just trying to say, it doesn't make GAFCON look more hopeful, much more. You've got something instead of.
It's always important to say the things that the gospel has borne witness to for 2,000 years. GAFCON has tried to express this with absolute clarity. And those things are still very important to say and very important for us to bear witness to. We must bear witness to the things that GAFCON has said and that the Anglican Church has always believed and that the Church has believed for 2,000 years. We must not be diverted from that. We mustn't allow ourselves to be diverted from what is important today. That we must overcome anything that's evil with good. That's what we must do as Christians.
You see, on the question about GAFCON, I think what this will remind me is that if it were GAFCON, the spirit of consensus and agreement, and we wouldn't have wasted all that time, going up and down over an issue that will be clear. The Spirit will be there to guide the people one time and they take a decision one way or the other. But you see, when you consider the amount of energy spent over that clause number 4, then you know that it's always important for people to be of one mind and spirit according to scriptures before they can move forward. I saw there today that we were not of one mind and spirit. And that is why there was that drop of a word of wisdom from a lady from Uganda asking us, did we really pray? Have we prayed? Did we seek the face of God? Is devil attacking us? And those rhetorical questions were suggesting that we were on the wrong side, if you like, of God at that material moment. And that is why we feel the frustration we are feeling. And that's why even somebody who now tries to bring in GAFCON into it, we say, there you are. How can you work together if you're not together in spirit? It's not to say that we are splitting the Anglican Church. It's simply to say, look, it's important for people of one spirit, one mind, one purpose, always to address issues. Well, not gathering, a kind of political gladiators in the name of ACC, and we come down and we split our heads, and at the end of the day, we come out with little or nothing but frustration and anger. I mean, I agree with the bishop here that we shouldn't really, whip up sentiments and that sort of thing. But we are human beings. You can go on and on over an issue. And then you say you can't, you at a point, be angry over what is happening. I am angry over what is happening. I am really very angry. Because, it sounds very childish what we are doing there today. And we are back to square one again. Considering the fact we are going to spend one whole year over an issue that's taking that long time. One has to be angry. Do we have the time for all that? And even as we are here now, I don't even know what my primate back home, I don't know what his reaction is going to be when eventually we report back to him. He might now call it a quit. He might.
To just give a few examples.
Sure.
When we were talking about the litigation, the bishop there said, look, if we have said let's put a moratorium on everything, let us include litigation and let us trust ourselves that we are going to talk honestly, in trust. And when two people have a disagreement, and like the Archbishop of Canterbury will put it himself, everybody take 3 steps backwards. 1, 2, 3. Then everybody talk. But then you say no. We will continue on other moratoria, but on litigation we will continue to eject you. that will not lead to any meaningful conversation or dialogue. Secondly, Archbishop Munir mentioned towards the end this evening and said, look, there were 2 resolutions before the House. That was what the Committee on Resolution presented to the House. What we call Resolution A, which talked about passing the covenant without Section 4. And Resolution B, which talked about sending the covenant to the provinces for their comments, for their proposed amendments, if any, or observations. The question was put, and Resolution A was defeated. That is, the suggestion that the covenant be passed without Section 4. The next thing one would ordinarily expect is to move to Resolution B in its text. When Resolution B was put before the House, contrary to all known rules, amendments started coming
Flying
from all angles. But then the particular amendment pointed out by the Archbishop is the amendment that brought back Clause 4.
Yes.
About Section 4 into Resolution B. So, on the one hand, we rejected Resolution A. On the other hand, we are now being asked to pass Resolution B, which also now included Resolution A, hitherto rejected. To all known rules, I have never seen that happen. And when the Archbishop raised the issue and even used the word illegality, all we got from the chair was that the Archbishop had said something and he took direction from the Archbishop. We may as well have just gone to the Archbishop and say, what do you want? And save all the trouble of all the debate of all the discernment groups. I mean, we have gathered here in this place at a cost of over £300,000 to the Anglican Communion. Why couldn't we have met the Archbishop in his palace in the UK and say, what do you want?
And finish the ACC
and then we
there.
finish the ACC there. We have all gathered, and at the end of the day, we now hear for the first time that this is what the Archbishop said. And therefore, the chair was taking direction from the observation of I think it was not fair. I think it was not proper. And I think it is not equitable. I just want to give this as examples of how you will see that the whole thing was being manipulated. The whole thing was not equitable. The whole thing was not fair. Be that as it may, I would always go back to what our father and bishop there has said. It is a very trying period for the church. And the Bible teaches us to love even our enemies and pray for them. And I want to believe that there is a human agenda, but I also want to believe that there is God's agenda. And it is my prayer and hope and wish that God's agenda would always prevail.
All right, I'm going to open it up to some more questions from the reporters here. I have George Conger with us, and he'd like to ask a question.
My name is George Conger. I'm from the Church of England newspaper. After the vote this afternoon, I was watching the Archbishop of Canterbury and his staff, and it was my sense that the Archbishop was very upset by what transpired. How might we support or pray for him at this time? Because I can imagine he's under a great deal of strain with all of what is going on. How might we go forward in a prayerful way? What would your suggestions be?
I think he should be very much in our prayers, not only today, but every day. And in the last few days, I really admired the Archbishop because he was very solid and very clear in what he said, in everything he said. He was so clear behind the covenant. And he wanted the covenant to keep the unity. He wanted the covenant to keep the ecumenical relation. He wanted the covenant to move the Anglican Communion forward into its mission. So I think what we probably need to pray for the Archbishop is for wisdom, for grace, for good advisors around him who really support him and listen to him. And in the same time, we should not let anger stop us from fulfilling God's mission. Sometimes we give a lot of attention to these kinds of disputes that distract us. I think the time has come. The time has come not to waste any more time. Let the people who are truly Anglican, who love the Lord, who really see that the mission need to go forward, come together, cooperate with each other, and walk forward. That is God's church, and He promised that the gates of hate will never overcome. And we, on this promise, we should go ahead. When I hear about Bishop Bell's mission in Peru, I get excited. That's what I want to share with. This is I want to partner with him. But to be distracted, we don't want to be distracted anymore. I think we should go forward doing God's mission. That is the most important thing.
I have another question here from Robert Lundy to my right.
Excuse me. Bishop Munir, you said something about time, and I kind of want to pick up on that. The Archbishop of Canterbury, in his one of his addresses that he's given to the ACC, said that we're in a state of emergency in the communion. Bishop Drexel Gomez from the West Indies said that we are in a point where we are close. Yes, a breaking point. Bishop Gregory Cameron, who was a leading figure in the communion, said that the communion needs to make decisions that stick. Several delegates today got up to say that we've spent a lot of time on this listening process, on the covenant as well, and that we want to move forward. My question is, when is it long enough? When, as far as listening processes and covenants, when do you discern that enough time has been wasted?
I think it's a very human question, and I think it's one that worries us all. I mean, I thought there was enough time today. I would like us to have moved on today, but we haven't, and so we have to readjust. I mean, whenever anything goes wrong in our life, from that moment on, God has a perfect plan for your life. It's not what it could have been 5 minutes ago if you'd made a different decision. But starting from now, God has a perfect plan. And from my point of view, I thought it was time enough today. Now it's costing me to adjust, but I must adjust to the new perfect plan that God has for the Anglican Communion, because that didn't go through. And I know that's unsatisfactory and it doesn't always help us, but that's where we start from. And if you'd asked people who 3 or 4 years ago made a decision about their church, what it should do, should it stay in ACUSA, should it move out of ACUSA, if you asked them today if they should have made the same decision, they probably wouldn't have made the same decision, because they know things now that they didn't know then, it would have been different. And I think we simply have to put ourselves in the hands of God and to be faithful to what God wants us to do. I'm desperately disappointed that he didn't go through. You know, we fought, we struggled, we did everything that we could. In the end, we lost. Right, we must start from right now. And we mustn't allow ourselves to be distracted by evil. We must remain loving people. We must love the church. We must care for each other. I want to learn to love all the people on the other side, because that's what Jesus did. When he went to the cross, he loved those who were crucifying them. Father, forgive them. Right, now we must do the same.
Okay, Chris Sugden, down at the end of the table, has a question.
Yes. There was a strong sense of it wasn't fair, and you have articulated that. Why do you think that Archbishop Rowan and Archbishop Drexel's very strong calls to this meeting of ACC14 didn't carry the day? Why do you think they didn't manage, their leadership didn't manage to carry the day? What were they working against that you experienced as not fair?
You see, this is part of the disappointing aspect, because the day the ACC14 started, I think it started on a note of optimism. Even from the words of the Archbishop of Canterbury himself, we were all hoping that towards the end, that the covenant, which he fully supported, because in the smaller discernment group, the Archbishop of Canterbury was part of our group, and his contributions were positive on that point. But coming now to when we wanted to conclude the whole thing, and the Archbishop of Canterbury, from his own submissions and words, we now, I think from my own assessment, I may be wrong, but I saw him now as a very weak leader who couldn't come forth to steady the ship. I mean, what would it have cost the Archbishop of Canterbury, looking at the way the discussion was going, and deep down in his heart, feeling that the thing wasn't going the way he wanted, standing up there to say, please, brethren, this way won't take us anywhere. Let's abandon this way and go towards this side. This is a better way that will carry everybody along. But that is the last thing, from my experience of the Archbishop, that's the last thing you get him to do. And yet this is what we expect him to do. And, you know, even in the last question we're saying, what you know, seeing that he wasn't happy about the outcome of the meeting, what should we be helping him in prayers and all that? Of course we are praying for the Archbishop of Canterbury. We do pray for him, and we'll continue to pray for him. But wouldn't he be courageous for once?
All right.
Could I ask a follow-up question? Some people have observed that a key turning point of the meeting was that point where the amendment that was part of Resolution C was proposed. It was rejected by the chair because he said that it was in effect bringing back something that had been just rejected in Section A. Then the Archbishop of Canterbury himself intervened and said probably people rejected A because they were expecting this amendment to come. And so it was the Archbishop of Canterbury himself who brought that amendment that Registrar Yisa, you have said, is contrary to all known rules of debate, back onto the table. Why do you think that happened? Was he confused?
But was that what the Archbishop of Canterbury had in mind? You know, earlier on, the Archbishop of Peru has said something which, you know, when on the floor, when he said, those of you who are afraid of paragraph 4, please don't be afraid. Your fear is protected in section C of the B part of the covenant, because you still have the opportunity to go back to your provinces and discuss that at length and then come up with an input. And I think that was what the Archbishop of Canterbury was referring to, saying that section A was thrown out in anticipation that it will be accommodated in this. But then, because there was a proposal of another amendment, C, which is the point I was making a while ago, they now brought section C in another form into B. At that point, the Archbishop of Canterbury would have stood up and said, please, brethren, that's not what I intended. And I don't think that way will help us. Let's go about it this way. But he didn't.
Chris, I think you are very correct in your observation. Let us go back to the rejection when the debate on Resolution A was going on. When the Archbishop of Canterbury stood up and spoke, the vote was 47 to whatever. That was roundly defeated. And it appeared to me then that the General House was taking cue from the direction that the Archbishop appeared to have given. And therefore A was roundly defeated. Perhaps, indeed, if the Archbishop had not spoken at all when B was being discussed, the result would not have been the same. But when he stood up to say, well, I spoke of this because in anticipation, the chair immediately picked it up and rejected any proposed addition, including objection from Archbishop Munir, that the Archbishop had already given a direction that it is in anticipation of what happened that he had said something against A. And you see, that was the point at which confusion came in. And we then began to have all kinds of proposals for amendments. We then began to have all the breaches of all the rules you can think of in this world. At the end of the day, delegates were left confused about what actually they wanted, about what actually the direction the Archbishop was leading the debate. Because people now said, wow, if he had said we should reject A, we've rejected A. If he said A is not the best in the interest and we've rejected A, we would have thought that if there was any clarification, what he said about B should have been more of a clarification rather than saying that I said what I said about A in anticipation that in B you are going to bring back A, because that's the way I read it. And that is the way it was read by most people, and that is the way the chair took it. And that is what has led us to where we are.
What I think, Chris, is that I'm really great in debates about an hour or 2 hours later when I've had time to think. I'm not so good at the actual moment. And, you know, it must be the same for the Archbishop of Canterbury as well, and for all of us. You know, like 3 hours later, when I lie in bed tonight, I'll be great at that debate. I'll think of all the things I should have said. You know, well, I mean, you can't. What can we do about it? Well, you know, you do your best, don't you? And I'm sure he does his best. And I don't think it'd be right for us now, with all the time in the world, to analyse the motives and say, yes, that's it. He made a mistake. Well, maybe he did. What can we do about it?
Well, Archbishop Munir tried to get a ruling that the order of the debate had been out of order and was ignored. Yes. I wonder if you could comment on that.
I just want to say that there was a language confusion. Many of the people who came from Africa and the Global South, they were confused regarding language as well. We didn't know why the defeated clauses are brought back, and what is this? What's going to happen? And there was a lot of confusion. Many shared with me that we didn't understand what's meant. What is this? remember that those like me who do not speak English as a first language, what we can get at maximum is 90% of what we can understand. 90%, 95% means that we miss about 5% or 10%. And this is a problem when people talk in their own first language, and like what you did when you spoke in Spanish the other day. No one understood a word. No one understood a word. I knew that you had what you wanted to tell the people, that if you spoke in a foreign language, no one will understand, and this is what exactly happened at this.
Yes.
But having said that, I'm aware about God's timing as well. I'm disappointed.
It's okay.
It's
Yeah.
Only two.
Yes.
I mean,
Only two. Sorry, guys.
Why don't you make it 3?
No. I thought of one. And I will do mine first, and George has a question. But you were talking about time, and is it time to the advantage of those who don't want a covenant? If I'm not mistaken, in about 2014, there'll be no more churches left in Akuza or Tech to sue. There'll be no more conservatives left to depose. I mean, time is on the side of Tech.
Yes.
Am I wrong in this, or?
I think you are. I think you are wrong about this, because I think the truth is the one that lasts. The truthful thing, the faithful people are the one who stay on, and the truth is going to last at the end. And I have a great example of this from my own country. The people who really brought lots of heresies in Alexandria, they disappeared. And it is the Orthodox Church that really was established on the truth, and the scripture is staying today.
yes. It's
And-
great.
And that is our hope. The time is in our side. It's not on Tech's side.
Yes. One last question, then you guys go to bed. George?
Bishop Godfrey, you, taking it down a bit, not as holy, you proposed with the presiding Bishop Jeffrey Shorey a listening process.
Yes.
And the Archbishop of Canterbury said, well, we don't need that because we have the Windsor Continuation Group. I don't want to ask about why the Archbishop may or may not have done that. I would be interested to know what you and the presiding bishop were planning. What was the program you had in mind?
No, well, I'll tell you that, and I think it's very important. It's that for some reason, godly men who understand the church and care deeply about the church, including the integrity of the authority of a jurisdiction, like the Archbishop of Uganda, the Archbishop of Kenya, the Archbishop of Nigeria, the Archbishop of Rwanda, Southeast, I mean, you can go on mentioning these, who understand the ecclesiology of the church and about the authority that's needed, discipline that's needed in each area, who know about not crossing boundaries. They're crossing boundaries. Now, why? And all I said to the presiding bishop was, we need to give them a chance to say why it is that they believe there's something so important that they must break one of these fundamental understandings or rules of the church in respect. Now, we need to hear what it is. We need to hear the stories of the people in the United States. Somebody gave to me a thick dossier of all the sufferings that's been happening of people within ACUSA. And I simply said to her, you keep your moratorium, And you've asked us to listen to the stories, the voices of gay and lesbian Christians. You say that's important for us to listen to, and the communion's listening. Well, if you're asking the other side to keep their moratorium, then we too need to listen to their story and their voices and what it is they're suffering and what it is that's being said. You know, I listen to archbishops and bishops from other parts of the world, and they don't understand. They just think that these archbishops are intervening in other provinces because they've nothing better to do, just to be bloody minded. Well, you know, I said to them, just a minute, something is causing this to happen. Now let's listen to these voices. So I went to Catherine Shorey and I said to her, I'm asking you, I am taking part in the listening process on your side. Now I'm asking you to help me to establish a listening process so we can hear the voices that are hurting and crying and coming from the United States. And she said she'd support me. And so in the debate I said I have reached an agreement with the presiding bishop, and I had reached an agreement, and I believe she wasn't going to speak against me at that point. Well, the Archbishop of Canterbury feels that it will be covered by the pastoral visitors, and I believe in authority within the church, so I withdrew my motion at that point. Now I hope that's the case, but I still believe that this issue will never really be resolved until we start listening to those who are suffering. We give them a voice. At the moment they're voiceless. I know you've got you guys who are forever telling the story, but I mean, frankly, we don't need to tell the story to the simple. We're not preaching to the choir any longer. We need to preach to the people who need to hear their voices. Those who oppose them and who are causing the suffering need to hear their voices. It's no longer just the people you're writing to who read your blogs. We need to start speaking to the people who are not reading your blogs.
I'd rather you not. I'd like.
but you know what I'm saying? I mean, we need to, for others in the Anglican community to hear the voices of those who are not listening at the moment, and to know that these archbishops are not just crazy guys who have nothing better to do than to intervene in another diocese. They're genuinely trying to respond to need in a part of the world where people are feeling the pressure of being Orthodox Christians. So, I mean, that's what I went to her and said. And that's why I don't want to be, personally, I will say this to you guys, I don't care whether you publish it or not, I don't want to be put in a box by anybody, because I don't want them to say to me, no, you're this. I want to be able to go to them and talk to them. Because at the end of the day, if we're going to have reconciliation in the church, and we've got to be able to talk. And if they just think I'm going to come with all my guns blazing, they're just not going to talk to me. So I want to go and talk. I want to have a dialogue. I want to be able to say, Catherine Shorey says that she will listen to me and grant a voice to them. I believe that's important. That's where I am. That's my angle. That's where I come to it from. You know, I think we've got to approach this in a different way. And I'm not condemning people who want to approach it in a different way, but that's not my way. I'm as orthodox as any. I wrote the Kuala Lumpur statement. If anybody wants to know where I stand, I wrote it. That's where I stand, the Kuala Lumpur statement. That's my view on sexuality. Right, they're my credentials. I live by that, and I work by that, but I don't want people putting me in a box and telling me who I can and can't talk to. So, you know, it's important for me to be able to stand up and say, I have agreed with Catherine Shorey this, and I wish I'd not backed off it now. You know, I should probably wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning thinking, why did I back off the Archbishop of Canterbury? Sorry, don't quote me on that. But, you know, I'll probably, yes, thank you, George. I'll probably wake up thinking, why didn't you just go ahead with that? Because she had said she would do it. And I've lost that opportunity now. And I'm silly me for doing that.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for your time.
Yes, ironically, the bishop was trying to amend a section where we had used the word conversation to add listening process, if you remember.
Yes.
That proposed proposition came from our group, my group with Archbishop Mune, where somebody incidentally from tech had brought up the idea of conversations going on between the various aggrieved groups, if you remember, my Lord Bishop. So the proposal came, and His Lordship now tried to add the listening process. But the whole thing died when the Archbishop of Canterbury said there were already sufficient.
It's a great shame.
It was proposed initially from my group by a member of tech.
Gentlemen, once again, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Yes, thank you.
Which one are you still of the OCMS one?
Well,
Have you still got mine? Or just drop me a quick line. Just send me an empty letter. So I don't relate to that.
I'll send you an email.
Frankly, you've got, I think, some other procedural things happen.